time is it?
We're early.
We're early? Okay, so we'll
I
wait a
just
few
signed
more
on.
minutes.
58.
Yeah.
We'll wait a few more minutes. So yeah, more people are logging on. Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. If you are comfortable having your camera on, that's always the preference, but we understand that the nature of this conversation is sensitive, and if you'd prefer to keep your cameras off, we understand. We're just very glad that you're here and joining us for this hour. Our expert on high conflict divorce we'll introduce in a moment. Three clocks and they all say something different. Is it 7? On one of my clocks it says 7.
6:59. Oh, I just turned 7. My clock. I don't know.
Okay. Very good. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to tonight's program entitled Let's Talk About Divorce, and a conversation with Virginia Gilbert, LMFT. And I'll be sharing a little, she's over in the corner, and we'll be hearing a little bit more about her in a moment. But first, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Carolyn Hoffman. I am a licensed clinical social worker and the director of the Sinai Temple Mental Health Center. Very briefly, our center serves as an in-house mental health resource for Sinai Temple members and employees. We offer one-on-one consultation for individuals, couples, and families, information and referrals, and community-wide informational programming on a wide variety of issues relating to mental health. Before I introduce Virginia, get started with our program, I want to remind everyone that we are recording this presentation, which is also being live streamed for the Sinai Temple website, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. So you will be able to revisit this conversation later on or share it with whomever might benefit from it. For those of you attending on Zoom, I want to invite you to write any questions that you have during the presentation in the chat, and we'll reserve about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end of the presentation tonight to ask and answer those questions. And you can ask anonymously, just to be clear about that. Okay, so Virginia Gilbert, welcome. Virginia is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Los Angeles. She specializes in the treatment of divorce, betrayal, trauma, and addiction. Until recently, she was a volunteer presenter at Second Saturday LA, a monthly workshop for people contemplating divorce. As a writer, her articles on mental health and divorce topics have been widely published online, and her book, Transcending High Conflict Divorce: How to Disengage from Your Ex and Find Your Power, is currently available on Amazon. And just a quick note, I finished Virginia's book a few days ago, and I found it wonderful, very accessible, and really wonderful. So if you're interested, please buy her book and use it as a guidepost. Okay, Virginia, we are so grateful for your availability to be here tonight and to share your expertise with us. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction, Carolyn, and nice to be with everybody virtually. Roy, can you start yeah, thank you. So the talk tonight is really thinking of divorce as a personal growth journey, because I find that helps sort of shift people from this awful thing happened that sort of blew up my life. So we're really going to talk in very tangible terms about how to shift from crisis to growth. Can you move to the next slide, Roy? Thank you. So just briefly, I mean, Carolyn introduced me very nicely, but a little bit more. I am a licensed and marriage family therapist in Los Angeles. I have been practicing for almost 20 years, about 11 or 12 years with really a focus on divorce. Just personally, I think sometimes it helps to know who is this person talking and why should I listen to her? So besides that I have professional experience, I also have personal experience with divorce. I went through a really apocalyptic divorce many years ago. And my divorce was a high conflict divorce. Hopefully any of you here who have divorce in your life, it's a garden variety divorce, but mine was not that. And at the time, people didn't really understand that high conflict divorce was a very different kind of divorce. So I felt very alone going through the process. I didn't know how to co-parent. None of the typical advice worked for me. And I made myself miserable for a lot of years. But when I focused on changing things that I could actually control, because some of those things were things I was doing, the situation really improved. And my ex and I never thought I would say we've been cordial for years now. So divorce gets better when each person focuses on their own personal growth. And you can, that's my website URL below. You're free to find out more about me by going on the website. Okay, Roy, next, please. So divorce is a crisis. It's not going to be a surprise if I say it's one of the most stressful life events because it changes everything. It changes your financial situation. It changes your living situation, most likely. It changes how you parent. But it really also changes your identity because it's your sense of how you're perceived in the community. So you go from being part of a couple, part of an intact family, that's very identifiable for people. And now you are not part of a couple. You are a parent, but you're a co-parent, and it may change things socially. So this is all very destabilizing. But the crisis is also an opportunity to self-reflect and to figure out what you need to change. I find that often people are not clear on their values sort of post-divorce because they knew what their values were when they were married. It's less clear when you're going through a divorce. And so it's a good time to reflect on what is really important to me. Because things that were important to your ex, you may have sort of felt were important to you, and now they're not as much. So it's a time to really define your values and kind of your mission. What am I doing with this next part of my life? And commit to a personal growth journey. Again, I don't want to hit a hammer on a nail too many times, but that is the key to coming through the divorce whole and better, is this is your personal growth journey. The people who thrive post-divorce take this journey, and the people who don't take the journey, from what I have seen, can really stay stuck and, blame their ex and blame the divorce. So I want to talk in this presentation about ways to transform the worst thing that happened to you into a vehicle for growth. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So divorce requires going through a grief process because it's kind of like a death. It's the death of what you knew about your life, and your vision for the future is now altered. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief can be applied to the divorce process as well. It's helpful to understand this model so that it can normalize your experience, so that you more easily understand, why am I feeling these things? So the acronym that she uses stands for these 5 stages, and it's DABDA. So there's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. It's important to know that these are not linear stages. It's not like you sort of cycle through them one at a time at a click, and then they never present themselves. Like that you can cycle through them often. Sometimes you feel like you're in a bunch of the stages in one day. That's all normal. I find that people tend to get stuck in bargaining. So bargaining is kind of that coulda, woulda, shoulda feeling. Like if only we'd gone to couples therapy earlier, if only I'd been nicer, and maybe it would have made a difference, but now it doesn't really matter because you are where you are. So it's important to understand and allow yourself to go through the grief process, because it's that unprocessed grief that keeps people stuck. Okay, Roy, next, please. So I did not actually know about another grief model that Carolyn enlightened me about it, and I think it's terrific. This is the Worden model, and it's just another way to conceptualize grief, but in a more active way. So William Worden was a psychologist who took some issue with Kubler-Ross's model. He felt it was too passive. And he believed that people who grieve need to be more active. They need to actively engage with what he called grief tasks. So the first one is to accept the reality of loss. So you don't have to like that you've lost the life you had. Like, why would you like that? But you just need to accept it's what is. Then experience the pain of grief. So, if you try to keep a stiff upper lip or act like everything is great, you end up just suppressing those feelings, and they're going to come out in some other way. So experience it. What is it like to feel really sad? What is it like to feel anger? You don't have to act unskillfully on those feelings, but it's important to acknowledge them. Adjust to your new life as a divorced person and a co-parent. So again, you might not like this, but not adjusting will keep you stuck. And then finally, he said that people going through grief need to embark on a new life, which is completely true. So divorce is the death of a dream that you had, but you can create a new dream. Okay, thanks, Roy. One very helpful thing to keep in mind is that the nature of your relationship is going to change. You are moving from being romantic partners and life partners to being business partners. And I see a lot of conflict with divorced couples because they're still operating as if they were married in a way. So for instance, a lot of times in a marriage, people will really be struggling to get their partner to validate them, respect them. They hope that they can sort of change parts of their partner's personality. Well, if you couldn't get your partner to treat you differently when you were married, they have way less incentive to do it when you're divorced. So you got to think of it as it's a business relationship. So you and your co-parent are business partners in a venture called Our Children. And you don't need to get hung up on not liking your business partner. They're your business partner. You don't have to like them. You just need to focus. You need to focus on getting along well enough that you manage the venture, which is your children, so that they thrive. Okay, next. I want to talk about emotion regulation because this is critical to managing divorce and also to co-parenting, but parenting. Divorce is really traumatic. So if we're under stress, like continual stress, our nervous systems are not operating optimally. So you may be in hyperarousal a lot of the time, which is you're always waiting for something else terrible to happen, like when's it going to happen? Or you're in hypoarousal, which is sort of checked out, and you might feel kind of really detached from what's going on around you. So if you're in hyperarousal or hypoarousal, you're operating from the lower parts of your brain, and you most likely are not interpreting events accurately. So what I've noticed with divorced couples is the time that they try to communicate with an ex is when they are the most dysregulated and the least likely to be able to interpret events accurately. So something may happen that's sort of a nuisance, but it's not, it's not a 10 on the Richter scale, but your nervous system is telling you this is terrible. So you fire off kind of a hostile email to your ex, and they don't listen to you. It gets worse. So you must learn to regulate your nervous system before you try to communicate or make an important decision. Okay, next, please. Okay, so that's great. How do I regulate my nervous system? It's important to identify techniques to help you do this and to implement them. So this is a practice. Managing your nervous system in times of a crisis, it's a practice. One thing that I tell everybody to do is to put yourself on a divorce curfew. That means you don't do anything divorce related after 8 p.m. with the idea being that if you're staying up late emailing your ex, or you're even on the phone sort of venting to your friends, you're getting your nervous system wound up when it needs to calm down so you can get a good night's sleep. And it's just a good practice to put the divorce away at 8 o'clock and focus on your kids. Knit, watch Netflix. I don't care. Just something that doesn't have to do with divorce, because it's another way of having an emotional boundary around you. The divorce just doesn't get to run your life. Get enough sleep and eat nutritiously. I know this sounds really simplistic, but it's amazing how dysregulating poor sleep and poor nutrition can be. So a lot of people, when they're going through divorce, like they go on the divorce diet, even if they don't mean to. And, maybe it's like, oh, that's great, I needed to lose weight. I mean, not eating and then being stressed out really dysregulates your nervous system. So if you feel like you're having a hard time eating, eat very small protein-rich meals throughout the day. Not even a meal, like a snack. If you're having trouble sleeping, you can Google, there's all kinds of ways to practice good sleep hygiene. You can Google how to do it. If you need some medication, talk to your doctor, but it is important to sleep and eat properly. Exercise is nature's mood stabilizer. So if you are somebody that you exercise all the time, that's great. Some people don't get around to it. So take a walk. Take a half-hour walk twice a day, once a day. Just get out and move your body. Walking is actually very good for regulating your emotions because it's bilateral stimulation, meaning you're moving both parts of your body. So it is an easy thing to do that will discharge negative emotions. Drink 64 ounces of water a day. That's 2 of these things. Most people don't drink enough water, and you'll find that you feel better if you drink enough water. Practicing diaphragmatic breathing it's the easiest way to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the brain that helps you calm down. So I want to do a little exercise now. And the first thing I want to, which I should have done at the very beginning, is just to ask everybody to make sure you're comfortable where you're sitting. So if you need to do anything to rearrange yourself so that you feel more comfortable, do it. But I want your feet to be on the floor. And I want you to put your hands on your belly. And I'm going to guide you through, I'm going to tell you what to do first, and then I'm going to guide you through it. So breathing in and out through your nose activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Having a longer exhale than an inhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So you're going to breathe in through your nose for 6. You're going to hold for 4. And you're going to exhale for 8. If you have your hands on your belly, you should feel your belly expand on the inhale and then constrict on the exhale. And so I'm going to walk you through a round of 5. I want you to keep your eyes open, and you can either sort of gaze ahead softly, or if you, for some reason, start to feel kind of nervous, look around the room where you are and focus on objects and focus on colors. But I want you to really be present for this exercise. Okay, so everybody ready? I want you to inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, Carolyn, will you be my guinea pig?
I will.
Tell me what you noticed. And I know we're too congested. It didn't relax you.
The breathing, yeah, a little challenging in any way. I felt better. I felt that a little more self-conscious at the beginning, kind of because it's being more mindful of the count and the rhythm. But as we progressed, I felt myself more relaxed for sure.
Great. So, this is a very simple thing you can do. If you make it a daily practice, it becomes an internal resource. So you want your body to kind of know what to do to calm yourself down. And the more you practice this, the more your body kind of records it. It's like a felt sense of safety. So, start with 5 minutes every day. I do it in the morning. It's great if you can get up to 15, but start with 5. Okay, Roy, I think I need the slide again. Great. And so another thing to do that's easy, just put a mindfulness app on your phone. So when you're really spinning out, you can listen to a mindfulness like mini podcast for 5 minutes. If you don't know what that is, like Insight Timer is a popular one and it's free. So I would recommend that. Okay, next slide, please. Radical acceptance. This is the cornerstone of divorce recovery. Divorce conflict really happens because people struggle to accept things they can't control, such as their ex's entire personality, parenting style, what their ex is doing in their home. The inability to accept these things that you can't control leads to suffering. You're just going to be, I can't believe he or she is like that. I don't like, how they're handling the bedtime routine in the other house. And it just leads to more conflict. So radical acceptance is not about being passive. It's about finding a way to be with what is instead of fighting reality. If you don't practice radical acceptance, you are likely to have co-parenting problems. Okay, how do you do this? How do you practice radical acceptance? Tara Brach is a leading mindfulness thought leader, and she actually wrote a book called Radical Acceptance. I think it's maybe like 20, 25 years old. And she sort of introduced this term into the zeitgeist. So she also has a method to help you practice radical acceptance. And you think of an acronym that's RAIN. The acronym is RAIN. So the R stands for recognize. You want to recognize the feelings you're having and name them. Because a lot of times we're just all wound up and we don't know what it is we're really feeling. So if you're feeling wound up, stop and figure out if you can identify, are you angry? Are you sad? Are you scared? And actually think to yourself what it is. Like, this is anger. This is what fear feels like. The A is for allow. So allow the feelings to exist. Don't judge them. Don't repress them. If you repress them, they're just going to get stronger. I is for investigate. So get curious about your experience. This is important because most of the time when we're having an unpleasant feeling, our instinct is to get away from it. Oh, I don't want to feel that. But you actually want to get closer. You want to sort of investigate what is going on. Like, what is upsetting me right now? Did anything change? Am I making myself upset in some way? Like, am I reacting in a way that's getting me all riled up? So that investigation kind of shifts you from a place of being really reactive and identified with this negative emotion to being an observer. And once you're in the observer position, you can engage more skillfully. The N is for nurture. So ask yourself, what do I need right now? Is there something that I can do to make things better? Very often people need self-compassion. And if you have more self-compassion, you're going to have more compassion for others. So I'm going to ask Carolyn to be my friendly guinea pig again. This is a somatic technique for cultivating self-compassion. So just to sidestep for a minute, traditional talk therapy it's top down, meaning you learn, you gain insight, and you have tools to kind of change the way you think, and that's very important. There's another therapeutic work that is bottom up, that comes from really working with the body to process emotions. So what I'm going to have Carolyn do is a bottom up approach. So Carolyn, again, just get yourself comfortable. And I want you to take your hand and you're going to put it over your heart. And I want you to sort of breathe into this space and feel, what is it like underneath your hand? Like, what are you noticing? Is it warm? Is it tingly? Is it Is it like, do you feel it in other parts of your body? Don't answer now. I'm going to ask you at the very end of this. So just notice what that's like. Then I want you to start tapping. Don't take your hand off this area of your heart, but take your fingers and just sort of tap in a rhythmic way. And keep breathing. And notice, what does that feel like? Am I noticing anything different in my body? Am I noticing something different in the way I'm feeling? And then I want you to start keeping the tapping going, like start a gentle rocking, almost like you're in a porch swing. So it doesn't have to be dramatic, it should be very easy. It should feel good. And I just want you to do that and keep the breathing. And again, just really notice, what is this like? What is it? What am I noticing right now in my body? What am I noticing right now emotionally? Okay. Tell me, what did you notice?
I'm not, we're not used to, I think, touching, like holding ourselves. So I was really just noticing the, like, feeling very solid, like, yeah. We wash our hands, we wash our face. But really, I was very much aware of just feeling like my body feeling grounded. So that was, and as I started tapping, it became more dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of a ripple effect that there was sensation, like as opposed to feeling grounded, it became more fluid, more dynamic. There was a sensation traveled beyond my hand, internally as well. So rather than it being just external on the on the outside, there was a depth to the experience. And then with the rocking, it introduced another level of incorporating more of my body. And there was more of a calming effect with the rocking. So I
love how present you were and engaged in that, and you experience that. That's sort of the goal of this exercise, is it should calm you down. So that is what you experienced physically first, and then it sounds like there's the emotion kind of came from the physical, from the affect regulation, from regulating your nervous system. So that is, it maybe seems kind of woo-woo, but it actually does. It's a very powerful somatic technique to calm yourself down. And it's cheap, it's free, so use it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some co-parenting problems. The problems that I'm going to talk about right now are relatively minor. They may seem like huge deals, but I guarantee you that fighting over these things is worse for your kids than what you think the problem is. So, disagreements over homework protocol. I see a lot of parents get into fights about they don't like how the other one is not managing homework. You cannot control how your ex handles homework. Disagreements over a child's diet, with the exception of a food allergy or a medical issue, other than that, like what your ex is making them for dinner or putting in the lunchbox you really can't do anything about it. Disagreements over bedtime routine. Yeah, it's if your ex has them stay up too late and doesn't read a story or whatever, not optimal. But again, the more you try to sort of reason with them and get them to do things the way you want, the more likely it is that they're going to resist it. Disagreements over screen time. This is a huge issue. And by the way, I'm not advocating don't try to get agreements on these things. I'm just saying it's very hard to kind of regulate, and no family court judge is going to show up at your ex's house and say, you gotta take their screens away. Like, there's just no way to enforce it, really. Disagreements over when it's okay to introduce your new partner to your kids. So I have seen a lot of couples put this into their divorce agreement, that it's going to be X amount of time before a new partner is going to be introduced, or they're going to let you know beforehand. I mean, that's great, but sometimes people will not agree on it. So what's worse for your kids to see is you having a really negative reaction to your ex's new partner. Okay, these are the co-parenting problems that really hurt kids. Interrogating your child about what goes on in their co-parent's house. This puts them in the position of either having to keep secrets or ratting out the other parent. It's a terrible situation, and it creates so much anxiety for children. Bad mouthing your co-parent. No matter what you think of your ex, they are inside your child. They are part of your child. So if your child hears you badmouth their other parent, they're going to think, oh, mom or dad, they don't like me, especially if they're like the parent that you're badmouthing. So that is very shaming for children, and it puts them in a double bind. It just puts them in a loyalty bind. Trying to act as your kid's savior. I see this happen a lot, where a parent will be convinced that the other parent isn't handling things well, or the child will be, they'll say, they're complaining about the other parent. So they try to rush in and be savior and get their co-parent to do things differently. But really what that does is it undermines your co-parent's parenting authority. And it's very bad for kids to feel like they're in a home with a parent that they get to boss around or not listen to. It's sort of along the same lines, telling your kids they don't have to listen to your co-parent because you're going to come to their rescue. Again, if you realize that you're a business partners now, you don't want to throw your business partner under the bus. Using your child as your therapist. If you're not regulating your emotions, or you're saying things that are too personal about what you're going through, it really emotionally burdens the children. It's just not their job to take care of you. And sometimes people think, well, I don't say anything. But if there's like a visceral charge that you have because you're so upset or wound up, they feel it. So that's why the whole kind of part about emotion regulation is so important, because the more regulated you are, the more you can help your child be regulated. Getting so worked up during custody transitions that your kid gets worked up. And I see this a lot, where there's a parent who'll say, well, Susie told me she hates going to her father's and really doesn't want to go, and she cries during transition time. And, there could be a legitimate reason why Susie doesn't want to go with dad. But you need to examine your own behavior. Am I anxious during the transitions? Do I tear up because I'm going to miss my child when they go to the other parent's house? So your child is picking up your emotions. So you need to work on yourself being calm to help make those transitions smoother. And then finally, just doing anything that makes your child feel like they have to take your side. It's just that's just a terrible situation for a kid to be in because it's a loyalty bind. Okay, so the best thing you can do for your kids, people get very sort of locked into parenting philosophies or they've got to go to a certain school, or my ex and I need to agree on camp, or whatever. There's a million things you think are just so important for your child. The most important things to do, number one, you show them how to do hard things. And you do this by modeling how to handle adversity. So if you're upset all the time, what are they going to learn? We shouldn't have bad things, or bad things are going to be the end of us. No, life is hard. Life is not fair. So teach them how to handle hard things and be resilient. You want to teach them good relationship skills by supporting your co-parent's relationship with your child, practicing emotional attunement. So again, if you're dysregulated, you may not be available to help your child regulate. You may sort of project your need onto your child. So you want to be able to attune to really what your child needs. Give them space to have their own feelings and express their needs and thoughts directly. One of the reasons divorce can be really traumatic for kids and set them up to have problems in relationships is because kids get triangulated. So the parents use the child as the messenger. This is like a really bad, it just teaches them how to not be direct in their own adult relationships, or how to try to overpower people. So you want to teach them how to express needs and thoughts directly. Teach them, can you go back? Thanks. So teach them conflict resolution skills by communicating effectively and not holding grudges and being flexible in your thinking. Okay, so how do I do that? How do I practice effective communication? So there is a wonderful, I love acronyms. So this is another one, and it was developed by Bill Eddy of the High Conflict Institute. So unskillful communication, especially when it's written, fuels conflict. So much of divorce conflict happens with the wonderful electronic communication that we have, because it gives people 24/7 access to vent. So the first thing to remember before you communicate with your co-parent is you want to make sure you're regulated. If you're not regulated, you're not going to communicate skillfully. So make sure you're regulated. Then when you need to communicate, use the BIF protocol. So that is be brief. If you're sending a 500-word single-spaced email to your ex, they're going to zone out. So say only what needs to be said. Be really concise. Be informative. So think like a reporter. Just the facts. Susie has a dentist appointment at 4:00 on Wednesday. Can you take her? Information is not your opinion. It's not the airing of your feelings. It's not unsolicited parenting advice. It's not trying to get your co-parent to be reasonable. It's just information, logistics. So Bill Eddy says the tone you want to strike in your communication is friendly. I do think sometimes that can be a stretch. So if you can't muster friendliness, be neutral. So no sarcasm, no it's funny if you use capital letters in email or texting, people think you're angry. So don't do that. Just try to be very neutral. And then you want to be firm. So a lot of people get into these sort of protracted email or texting volleys. Set a limit, stick to it, don't waffle. Next slide, please. Okay, so what can you do to manage divorce stress? What else other than what we've talked about? You can definitely consult with a divorce therapist. If you're going through the divorce process, you might want to consult with a divorce coach. They're not clinically trained usually because they're not therapists, but they know they can guide you through the process. You want to definitely stay up to date with your medical care. Don't let your annual checkups go to the wayside. Don't do too much venting. I can't emphasize enough how unhelpful chronic venting is, because you're retelling the problem story. So you re-traumatize yourself. It doesn't change anything. You're just more reminded of, my ex is driving me crazy. And, so don't focus on the venting, focus on what can I do? What can I actually do to change things? Lean on a few people, and this is important, who are not dramatic people. So you don't want people who will get really scared for you or get really angry for you. That's going to fuel the unpleasant emotions you have. You want calm people who will be supportive. A great way to process stress is to be creative. Being creative is just another way of kind of figuring out a situation without even really trying to figure it out. So, whether that's cooking, whether that's gardening, whether that's painting, whether that's knitting, writing, this is it's a wonderful way of working through emotions, and then you feel good because you've accomplished something. And then, community. You've lost a connection to your former life and to your identity as a married person. Lean into the other connection you have. So your temple community, any other community group, because healing comes through connection. Okay. The last thing I will say is that, so I said at the beginning that divorce is a personal growth journey. I have a template that I'm happy to send to anybody who emails me. My email address is on this slide. So what you have in this template is there's a little psychoeducation piece about the developmental tasks of the age you are and what you need to focus on. Then there are prompts to help you define your values. And then once you have your values, there's a prompt to write a personal mission statement. So this is really important to have your own ethos for the rest of your life, because people going through divorce get really hung up on, if I get the support that I want, or if I get to keep the house, or if we have this sort of idealized co-parenting relationship that my sister has, like, I'll be happy then. And not necessarily the thing. You don't really want to think about being happy. You want to think about living in integrity, and living in integrity is aligning your actions with your values and your mission. Yep. And that's my email address. And I think, Roy, am I done? I can't remember if I'm out of slides. I think
Yes.
I'm done.
Yes. That is the completion of your slideshow. So thank you. That was amazing. I want at this point to invite anyone here who has a question to write your question in the chat, and I will read them to you. There was a question about getting a copy of your slides, and I wrote that anyone can contact me at Sinai Temple. It's my email address I put also in the chat, choffman@sinaitemple.org. Or they can contact you directly, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Either.
Perfect. So while we're waiting for anyone to write questions, there's a lot there to unpack. I had a question. I actually have a couple questions. And these are, the first question is actually two parts. So I've got three questions. The first question has to do with parenting. The first part of that is in your book, you talk about not co-parenting, but parallel parenting. And I thought that maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit more. That's part A. And part B, I was curious if there are, if you could maybe illuminate some differences in parenting different age groups. So for example, if you're going through a high conflict divorce with school age children, that may feel very, very different. That might look very different than if you have teenagers and high school students. So I wanted to give you those two parts and elaborate.
Okay. Yeah, so good question. Co-parenting is really for people who are pretty amicable and can be flexible and are relatively reasonable. And it just means that you are open in your communication. There's not like these weird power struggles. You're not keeping information from the other person, and you have, it's relatively easy to agree on basic things. Parallel parenting, there's some people who just are not going to be able to co-parent. And so parallel parenting is just, it's kind of like, when kids are around 4 years old, maybe they haven't really figured out how to interact together. And if you put them in the sandbox, they're both doing things alongside each other, but they're not really interacting. That's kind of parallel parenting. It's like you kind of give up the notion that, wow, we're going to be able to have family dinners together, or, whatever it is. You communicate as little as possible because the effort to communicate causes so much conflict. So it's kind of like whatever's going on in the other person's house, you don't get involved in it. Now, with the exception of if you have tangible evidence that something unsafe is happening, then you have to get involved. But a lot of the things that people think they need to get involved with, they really don't. So it's just kind of you do you and I'm doing me, I guess would be the simplest way to say that. So the second part of your question is school age children versus teenage children. So the school age, the things I see with the school age children is agreeing on the timeshare, so that the custody schedule, because really little kids usually can't have that much time apart from the primary caregiver. So there's going to be like more transitions, and it's great to work with a child development expert to figure out my child is 3, like how often should they be going back and forth and how long with which parent. So that is important, that the kids don't determine that, you determine that. As kids get older, as teenagers, sometimes they want to change which parent they're with. And it's very hard to force like a 6 foot tall, 16-year-old boy to go to a parent's house that they don't want to go to. So I think that's when you can listen more to what your teenager wants. I would say no matter what age the child is, they need to know that the divorce was not their fault. You don't expect them to fix it. You will always love them. They always need to hear that. You will always love them, and it wasn't their fault, and they don't need to fix anything. They don't need to worry about you.
Thank you. Thank you. Someone else wrote, and
what if you didn't think?
I'm seeing Rabbi Guzik in the wings, so we'll get to you in a sec. What if you did things wrong with your emotions in the past and your kids are in their 20s now? It's sad to remember. What can I do now?
We all do things we shouldn't have done in the past. I certainly did. I think being accountable in a very sort of easy and direct way does wonders. Like, I'm so sorry I did that, whatever it is. I realize that probably hurt you, invite your adult child. What was that like for you? Like, is there anything you want me to know about what it was like for you? And just say, I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I let you down. Like, a lot of parents feel like they can't do that. It can really be a game changer, because then you just become human to your child. And then they know it's okay to make a mistake. I can apologize. I can take accountability. So I think if you're having a regret about something, invite your child to have a conversation with you. Maybe they don't want to hear it. If they don't want to hear it, then you need to respect it. But just let them know that you regret the impact that it might have had on them, and you're really trying to do things differently.
Thank you. I actually had one more question, and then start wrapping up a little bit. So I'm a mental health provider in a synagogue, and I was really interested in reading your book. You have a chapter or two on the power of spirituality on personal growth and healing. Not only, obviously, spent an hour talking about divorce, but with any trauma. And I thought that was really, and you speak incorporating the 12-step ideas, but even beyond that, there's a place, right, for spirituality in this kind of growth journey. Again, whether it's divorce or any kind of trauma. So I thought I just wanted to give you a minute, if you could elaborate on that a little bit more, since we are a faith community, and I just thought it was really refreshing for a mental health provider to incorporate that into your work.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I have to say, that really hit me that having a spiritual connection is so important with divorce. When I asked a very powerful family law attorney many years ago, like, she represented huge, like, celebrity cases, and I said, what is the number one divorce advice you give your clients? And I thought she would tell me some, like, kind of how to be the most ferocious and overpower your ex. And she said, she thought about it and she said, I tell them to maintain their spiritual practice. And I totally understand what she meant, because a divorce is so destabilizing, and it kind of takes you down to your core. And if you are dependent on externals, I got to have the house, I got to have we go here on vacation, and I got to be married, like, you're really going to struggle. Like, you have to have a connection to something that is, well, outside yourself, in the sense that you feel connected to something bigger than you, but that it also cycles back to inside, like, where you're going to feel grounded, because it's just not about you and these externals. So whether that's you believe in God, or it's faith-based, or whether it's mindfulness, whatever works, but to really lean into your spiritual practice. And I think, again, so much of spirituality comes with community. And, it's wonderful that this is a temple community sponsoring this event. So there's different ways to find spirituality, but yeah, I think it's critically important with divorce.
Thank you. So I do want to take this moment to introduce Rabbi Nicole Guzik, who is with us tonight, and welcome. She is one of our clergy at Sinai Temple. So welcome, and want to give you an opportunity to say a few words and make a few comments.
I was really, thank you so much. I was just honestly going to remark on one or two things that you said that just really struck me, and I would be curious to hear a little bit more about it. And I really, along with Carolyn and those present tonight and those watching online and in the future, I'm so grateful for this conversation. I mean, you've really opened my eyes as a rabbi, also a mental health provider. I'm an MFT, not an LMFT yet, MFT.
Okay.
But you really opened my eyes to so many layers of the conversations between partners and between children and families. And two things struck me. I thought it was really interesting that you said to stop rehashing it. Like so I don't know if you could speak to that for a moment more, because I feel like so often we give the advice, like, talk about it, talk it through, like, we're here to listen. And so I would just, at what point do you know, or what point do you give the advice, stop?
Right. So that's excellent. I guess I want to first say that so the recent developments in trauma therapy, it's actually less about talking. It's more about grounding yourself and developing internal resources in order to be able to talk and sort of process things that way. But I think there's just this notion that, the venting and sharing all the details with a friend, it's going to make you feel better. And it might scratch the itch in the moment, but it just sticks in your brain. You've just reminded yourself of how terrible your life is. You're not going to feel better. And I will find that clients will come in, and there's certain people who tend to vent and talk about how terrible their ex is because they are generally not sure how to move on with their life. Either their whole life was a stay-at-home parent, and they're realizing they got to go work, or they sort of don't have enough of sense of themselves, so they focus a lot on their ex. So they may think it's really important to tell me all these details, and it's a distraction. I think it becomes almost addictive. There's something addictive about the anger and this sort of compulsive circling the drain. So it's not that you shouldn't talk about things, but you need to focus on, okay, but what can I do?
Right. And I found that very liberating, like when you kind of speaking about the sense of dreaming again, how scary it is to know that you're responsible to create a new dream, but how liberating that can be. So I found that really revelatory. And then one of the last things you said, it kind of rubbed me, that giving permission to your adult children, or you rather saying to them that I failed, like that was a very strong word. Was that a choice in using the word fail?
Well, I think it depends what it is. I don't mean to fail like I'm a washout as a parent.
Right.
I think, and I'm not saying you have to use fail, but if there was something you did that was really screwed up, like it's more like I failed you in this instance. You needed something different and you didn't get it. It's like acknowledging the wound of the child.
Right.
And that is, I think, where the healing comes from, where it can be brought out into the open instead of this thing that we don't talk about.
No, and I just appreciate, and I'll stop talking now, but I appreciate you saying that, Virginia, because, we speak so much about this idea of tshuva, of repentance. And I think it's hard for many of us as we age to think about the wounds that we, left years prior. And that you can still grow as a person by admitting, I failed in that moment. I fell in that moment, and you will too. But look, like I'm imperfect, and I can admit that imperfection years and years later. That too, I find it's like a release. When in you
Yeah.
saying that, I felt like it was like a release.
Ah, great. Yeah.
Truly, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So thank you. I want to be mindful. We're actually just a few minutes over. I can't tell you how delightful this was, Virginia.
Delightful talk about divorce.
Well, I think that part of our mission, the mental health center, but just in general in our world today, is that there's things that happen to us as human beings that are painful, right? And that that we suffer. And if we bring it out into the open and we acknowledge it, it's exactly what you've been talking about tonight. It helps, right? There isn't any reason that that we should suffer alone. And when and divorce is real in our communities, and having these kinds of experiences together where we can talk about it and express ourselves, share some tips, and share some resources. It's just going to serve us all as we move forward. So thank you. Everybody has your contact information. If they don't, please contact me. I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Virginia. And I want to thank our staff.
Hmm?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you for letting me be of service. Yeah.
Oh. And I want to thank Judy and Roy, who are behind the scenes making this happen, pushing this on our social media sites. So thank you, Virginia. Hope everybody has a good night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.